The event tonight is meant to provide information and an update on the borough budget process. If you've been watching what's been going on, we started that process back in January, and we're rounding the corner and just about to wrap that up. And to that end, the official public hearing on the budget will take place on May 6th at the Juanita Helms Administrative Center, and we will probably have also a presence on Zoom also. And then the last but not least, please be mindful of those around you and try to maintain a 6-foot social distance so we keep each other safe. That would be helpful. And with that, it is 6:01 p.m. Ms. Williams, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So good evening, everyone. My name is Leah Berman Williams. I'm a member of the Fairbanks North Star Borough Assembly, and I'm also chair of the Assembly Finance Committee. Our plan for tonight is to tell you a little bit about how we got to where we are in the budget process, and then present what the mayor's proposed budget was, and discuss what the changes that the Finance Committee made. After that, you'll have an opportunity to ask questions about the budget, and hopefully this will give you some information to use if you plan to make public testimony about the budget. So how did we get here? The mayor proposed a budget to the Assembly, and then the Assembly spent 3 Saturdays in April as a Finance Committee going over the details of the budget and making changes. Those 3 work sessions ended April 27th? No. Anyway, last Saturday. And so now the Assembly has made the amendments that the Finance Committee is proposing, but there's still an opportunity for people who give public testimony to possibly change what the Assembly thinks. So the Assembly will have public testimony on the budget on May 6th, and then we'll finally vote as an Assembly to approve the budget as amended. So this is really an opportunity for you to ask questions. It's not the right venue to provide public testimony. That happens on May 6th in front of the full Assembly, either in person, if you come down to the chambers, or over Zoom or by email. So at this point, I will turn the presentation over to Jim Williams, Chief of Staff from the Mayor's Office, and he will talk about some of the highlights of the Mayor's proposed budget.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. And on behalf of Mayor Ward, he wishes that he could really be here, but he's feeling a little under the weather, so he asked me to jump in, and I'm happy to do that for him. So real quick, let's go through the mayor's proposed budget, what was presented to the Assembly. So at this point, like Ms. Williams was saying, it's not the mayor's budget anymore. It is now the Assembly's budget, but I'll go through quickly what the mayor proposed to the Assembly. So the FY22 recommended budget was $173,496,346, which if everything goes as presented, the area-wide mill rate would be about 13.799 mils. So that's about a 0.1 mil decrease from the prior year. So a couple highlights from that is the total recommended budget is just under $1 million from increase from the prior year revised, so about 0.5%. And that includes a $12 million contribution to the Capital Improvement Maintenance Reserve Fund, which most folks might remember that as the Facilities Maintenance Reserve Fund. So recommended budgets over time, it's been a pretty smooth curve. You can see the slide back to 2012. It matches pretty close to CPIU, which is normal inflationary curve over time. And if you see at the very, very end of the curve, a slight dip down, that's the recommended budget versus the approved budget from last year. That slight dip down accounts for the increase to the Capital Improvement Fund, which is quite substantial this year. So budget's explained. So there's 3 versions of the budget. First up is the recommended budget. This is the budget that the mayor starts working on usually right around Christmas time, and works with staff internal to the organization. And then the mayor submits that budget to the Assembly no later than the first Thursday in April. So this year it was the first Thursday in April. Once the mayor's budget is submitted, it becomes the Assembly's budget, and the Assembly's budget is where we're at right now, Once the assembly is done with that budget, it is the approved budget. And that should usually it has to be approved no later than May 31st of the calendar year. And then beyond that, things happen throughout the year. We'll have projects that come at us that we weren't expecting, or small administrative changes, and we'll recommend to the assembly to amend their budget off and on throughout the year, and that budget would be the amended or the revised budget. So budget actions that were taken this year in the mayor's budget, one of the goals the mayor had was stability in our local economy. So what he's decided to do is try to keep the mill rate flat compared to last year. So last year, the mill rate, area-wide mill rate was 13.891 mills. And this year, if everything goes as planned, the mill rate should come in right at 13.799, 13.8 mills, which is still about $6.6 million under the tax revenue cap that the voters passed. So like I said, the estimated area-wide mill rate is about the non-area-wide mill rate is set at about the same as it was in FY 2021. So to balance the budget this year, to keep the mill rate flat, we took $5.6 million out of our savings accounts. So that's a general fund balance. And to do that, we had to keep department increases pretty flat, with the exception of the Carlson Center additions, which we'll get to here in just a little bit. Also, to do that, we kept the school district funding pretty flat at about $49 million, despite the enrollment drop of about 2,000 students this year. Another budget action that was recommended in the mayor's budget was to approve funding for the energy efficient tax credit program, which went into law in February this year. That actual request from the assembly, that $150,000 request, was actually amended down at the last budget work session to reflect the actual need based on the applications that we got. And then the budget also assigns a contingency for tax valuation uncertainty. So what that means is there's a couple of large properties where there's been disputes over what the tax values are, and we're not sure where this is going to go, so we want to keep a little bit in reserve just in case the borough does not prevail. Another big budget action that's taken into consideration is the Carlson Activity Center management. The mayor recommended bringing that in-house, and to do that, we had to restructure parts of Parks and Recreation to create a new division, and which is going to increase some personnel costs. So those personnel costs are offset partially by the management fee that we subsidized to the management company over the last few years. And then this budget also incorporates the effects of Ordinance 2021-14, which raised the amount of funds that went in the Capital Improvement Maintenance Reserve. It used to be 9% of the area-wide taxes. Now it is 10% of the area-wide taxes, almost close to $12 million. So the major Fairbanks North Star Borough taxing jurisdictions. So we have multiple layers of jurisdictions all throughout the area in the Fairbanks North Star Borough. The biggest one is area-wide. So area-wide is probably what most people are familiar with. It is the property assessment and collection, which covers public schools, the planning and zoning department, solid waste disposal, which is the landfill and not the transfer sites. It does some emergency communication services like 911. It's funded by, we have some other functions in there like tourism and marketing, which is funded out of hotel and motel room taxes. So these are the bigger services that most people are familiar with in the borough. Another taxing jurisdiction that sometimes can be a little confusing is the solid waste collection district. So this is basically the transfer sites. This is a service for everybody who lives outside the city of Fairbanks. And then we have the non-area-wide service district, which is basically for EMS services, economic development, fireworks control. It's a very small portion of our overall budget, but it serves the areas outside the cities of Fairbanks and the cities of North Pole. So you have, as you can see, there's different overlapping taxing jurisdictions in the borough. So some other smaller taxing jurisdictions that folks may or may not be familiar with is fire service areas. So we have 5 fire service areas in the borough, and those are independent taxing jurisdictions. And those fire service areas hire contractors to provide the firefighting services. Those are not they're different contracts than EMS. They're just for firefighting services. And then we have road service areas. So if you're in a road service area, you probably know what that is. We have 103 road service areas in the borough. And basically, they provide road maintenance service to the level that the road service area commissions decide that they want the level of service to be. And then there's some smaller ones in the borough. There's we have a sewer one and a light pole one out in West Fairbanks. They're very, very small. Okay, so the non-area-wide fund, here's the basic details of the finances on it based on the mayor's proposed budget. So the mill rate on the mayor's proposed budget would be set at 0.619 mils. And so this is everybody outside of the city of Fairbanks and the city of North Pole would see that mill rate. So we got the budget we kept it under the tax cap by about $40,000, and that's contributing $133,000 to the fund balance for future needs. And just for knowledge, a mill of property tax is worth about $5.6 million in the non-area-wide fund. Solid waste collection district, again, that's the transfer sites. So the mill rate for those sites this year should be about 1.682 plus or minus. And we are able to keep it under the tax cap this year, but by about $8. So fees in that area, the cost to run that service continue to escalate. We needed to put about a $17,000, $18,000 contribution to fund balance planned for future years. And just for knowledge, a mill in the solid waste collection district is worth about $5.8 million. And then the general fund, area-wide, this is the big one I was telling you about that most folks are familiar with. The mill rate in that, as proposed, would be about 13.799 mils, pretty flat compared to last year. And under the tax cap, we were able to propose a budget that's about $6.6 million under the cap. And also, to balance the budget, we would need to pull about $5.6 million out of the fund balance. We also had that contingency for valuation uncertainty. Remember, I talked about the property tax valuation dispute. We don't know where that's going to go, so we set some aside just in case we don't prevail. And so the value of a mill, a property tax in that area is about $8.4 million. So just a table on the area-wide mill levy allocation. This, you guys probably have seen this on your tax bill to some degree. You can see a line for general government, the amount that's available for capital improvement. So remember, we put $12 million into capital this year. That equates to about 1.3 mils of property tax. And then general government debt service is still very low. Education comes up to about 5.6 mils, and then debt service on the school buildings that we still are holding some debt on is about 1.3, 1.4 mils. So you can see how it all tallies up to that 13.799 mils for area. Cost by department, you can see the biggest cost driver in the borough in the area-wide taxing district is education. Second is public works. And then third, coming in at third or a close third to our debt service is our contribution to facilities maintenance. And then parks and recreation, fund balance contributions, and you can see all the way down through the department. So education and public works, maintaining the facilities that we have, is the biggest cost drivers in the borough budget right now. So employee adjustments, just for folks' information, FY 21 to 22, we increased FTE from about 407 to 413. That 6.25 increase reflects mostly the Carlson Center adjustments. Just rough, we count belly buttons also. 441 personnel increased to 444 personnel, actual people. So you can see that some of them are part-time employees. So mill rates versus net taxable assessed value. So I like to look at this curve. Sometimes you can kind of see what's going on with property values in the area. So the red line is the mill rate over time. It goes back to about 1990, and you can see that it fluctuates. The vertical axis is on the left side. You can see that it fluctuates from about 11.5 mils up to a little bit above 14. It just kind of goes up and down. So we're about 12.8 mils or so is the average mill rate that it's been fluctuating over the years. Interestingly, you can see the curve for a net taxable. This is the net taxable value of property in the borough, and you can see it has a nice smooth curve upwards, which is nice, all the way till about 2016, and things started changing. And we can go over that here in just a minute, but we seem to be back on that curve from here. I don't know if you can see my arrow pointing. That curve right there, that dip down, was related to property tax exemptions. Let's see if I can get that up there. So another look at mill rates, and we'll talk about property tax exemptions here in a second, but you can look at mill rates. Again, it's another way to view the data. This is the area-wide curve on the top blue one. The gold line is solid waste collection district, relatively flat with a slight increase up towards the end. and then non-area wide stays pretty flat on the mill rates. So let's talk about property tax exemptions. So there's two kinds of property tax exemptions. One is the state mandatory exemptions, the senior citizen exemption, and then the disabled veterans exemption. Those are mandatory exemptions that we administer here in the borough that the state statute requires. And then we have other exemptions like the homeowners exemption. We have a firefighter and an EMS exemption. But one thing I would like to bring to attention, if you saw that prior graph, that sharp drop down in 2016, 2017, that accounts for this sharp increase in the homeowners or the residential property tax exemption. So prior to 2018, voters passed a voters initiative to raise an assembly initiative to raise the homeowners exemption from $20,000 per year to $50,000. So what you can see right there is that's when that was implemented in 2018, it just took that much taxable value off the tax rolls. So total assessed valuation, that's another way to look at it. It's constantly increasing in the non-area wide area. City of Fairbanks has increased over the years and seems to be flattening out, and City of North Pole is staying pretty flat. Most of our growth right now in the borough is happening outside of the cities. I don't know if folks know that. So back to Ms. Williams.
Thank you. So what Mr. Williams just described is the budget that the mayor proposed to the Assembly. And as I said at the beginning of this session, the Assembly spent 3 Saturday work sessions and a couple of evening pieces of Assembly meetings discussing the budget and making amendments. Because the budget that the mayor proposed was really very conservative with overall very little changes from last year's budget, the Assembly made relatively few amendments, but we did make some significant amendments. Among these amendments are adding a vehicle so that the employee in community planning responsible for code enforcement can actually go look at code violations or potential code violations. And along with that, paying for a new online program so that it is easier for people to submit potential code violations. So I know that one of the things that people get really upset about is when their neighbors are violating land use provisions. So hopefully this will allow folks to let the borough know when there are problems and then allow the borough to more effectively investigate these problems. In the mayor's budget, he had proposed giving Explore Fairbanks a little bit of additional money in recognition of the fact that last year tourism was dismal and therefore the amount of money that was available for the borough to allocate to Explore Fairbanks was less than they had hoped for. The Assembly, however, thinks that it is possible we will get some significant money that we can spend on tourism from the federal government, from the American Rescue Act, and so the American Recovery Plan, and so they did diminish that extra money that the mayor had proposed. The school district lost a lot of students last year, primarily from students who switched to homeschools either within the district or outside the district because of concerns about how remote schooling was going to work. We hope that a lot of these students will come back to our district schools. But until we know for sure, the school district is limited in how much money it can project. So one plea I have to you is if you or people you know are planning to send your kids back to school next year in our buildings, please let the school district know as soon as possible so that they can make sure that they can hire enough teachers. But in recognition of the challenges that the school district is facing, the Assembly did allocate an additional $400,000 taken from the general fund to the school district's budget. Because it's taken from the general fund, that doesn't affect the mill rate, but it does give the school district a little bit more money. To compensate for that, we did approve cutting almost $200,000 in contributions to various multi-year programs. And one of the major changes that the Assembly did, this was not a change to the mayor's proposed budget, but the Assembly supported the mayor's proposed change to the management of the Carlson Center with the requirement that the Carlson Center part of Parks and Recreation under this new scheme would have some additional financial reporting requirements. And I'd like to invite Donnie Hayes, Pioneer Park Manager, to just talk a little bit about some of the proposed changes to the Carlson Center.
Thank you very much for letting me come and speak today. The Carlson Center has always been an asset to the community of Fairbanks, and the Parks and Recreation Department believes that it can continue to do so. Some of the things that we are looking at doing is opening up the facility more for a daily access, whether that be through our play zone area for young kids or an after-school teen area. We're also looking at continuing to sponsor and support UAF hockey at the facility, including also using the space for indoor soccer during the wintertime. During the summertime, we're looking at basketball, pickleball, possibly tennis, or other facility uses that could be there. This facility is beautiful, has a lot of opportunities. We truly believe it's an asset. So when we were looking at this plan, before we made the choice to move this direction, we looked to the community, asked the community, what would you guys like to see at the Carlson Center? How would you like to see it managed? And through a study, we found that some of the things that the community really wanted was to see some of these teen-focused areas. Wanted to see us continue to have our special events, continue to still use it for a lot of the spaces that we're already doing, but like I said, opening it up on a daily basis. We created this plan with 6 goals in mind. The first one was to transition the facility from a privately managed facility to a publicly managed operation. The second one was to develop a schedule that is community-based, allowing for the maximum usage of the building. Next, we also wanted to operate the facility with a reasonable fee structure, making it possible that more users could use that facility through rentals, weddings, events, activities. Next, we wanted to create a sustainable plan, one that we knew that could last for years to come, that allows for growth that's based on the success that we're going to have. We're looking to recruit and develop external partnerships in such a way that will allow our business partners to succeed and grow. That'll be through concessionaires, that'll be through folks coming out and doing food and beverage work at the facility. We truly believe that we can partner with a lot of folks to be able to make that facility prosperous. And lastly, we wanted to create a plan that is fiscally responsible. You'll look at, if you go to fnsb.gov/budget, there's a lot of information there about the Carlson Center plan. We truly believe as a Parks and Recreation Department that this is an asset not only to the community, but also to our department. The way that we currently have it laid out is that the Pioneer Park and also the Carlson Center would become one division, where we would then be able to use and cross-share a lot of staffing and a lot of services. And we believe this is a great opportunity for the community to be able to manage a facility and provide amazing content and programs and events for the community. Thank you.
So the summary of where we stand on the budget is that the mill rate, in other words, what you see in property taxes, is basically flat, and the budget is significantly under the tax revenue cap. Department budgets, with the exception of Parks and Recreation, were basically held flat to the extent that's possible. We are proposing, and the Assembly Finance Committee has approved, taking over the management of the Carlson Center to have it be managed in-house. And the borough is making higher contributions to facilities maintenance and capital projects because that has been made clear is that making these maintenance activities is a priority in the borough, that it's important that we maintain what we have. So at this point, we would like to open it up to whatever questions folks in the audience have, or folks online if there's a way to take those questions. I'll remind you again that today is an opportunity to ask questions about the budget, but if you have comments you want to share on the budget, or if you have concerns, things you want the Assembly to know before we vote on the budget, the way to communicate those comments or concerns is by giving public testimony on May 6th, either in person or telephonically at the Assembly meeting, or by emailing assembly@fnsb.gov. So now we will open it up to questions.
I don't have a specific question, but I would like to say I applaud the borough for trying to make a change for the Carlson Center. I'm pleased that SMG would be gone from this. It hasn't been a good fit for many, 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 many years that I've attended countless different events. So I like the idea. I remember when the Carlson Center first opened back in 1990, if you notice, it says Carlson Center Community and Activity Center. And on many degrees, it served that purpose. Nanook hockey, concerts, trade shows, luncheons, all sorts of great opportunities. And Fairbanks needs this building because we live 7 months in winter. And so to have more opportunity to go inside, to have many different options for events, and including many of the new events that are probably going to be on the table, I think it's a great idea. Budgets are never an easy thing, but I applaud the mayor for coming up with a plan, and I'm sure there's going to be some wrinkles that have to be worked out, but I think that overall, I'd like to see this go through, make sense, give it a try, and I think it'll be a good thing for the community.
Thank you, Mr. Aselius.
Yeah.
And please, if you could say that again on May 6th or in email so that the rest of the Assembly hears it, we would appreciate it. Thank you. Next on my sign-up list is Dan White.
Well, I'll apologize in advance because I don't actually have a question, but I do want to express thanks, Mr. Williams and Dr. Berman. I know you guys spent a lot of Saturdays working this out, and I also want to thank the mayor and the Assembly for this plan, because it is important for the Alaska Nanooks to have some stability in the Carlson Center, and we think that the borough management of the Carlson Center is a good strategy. So I apologize, it's not a question, but thanks for all the effort that you've put into this. It's a good thing for our community and a good thing for UAF. Thank you.
Thank you. And again,
I will respond for
perfect. Thank you very much. Any other questions? All right, I am not seeing any questions. I want to again extend my thanks to all of you who came here in the auditorium, and all of you who are called into the Zoom or who are watching on Facebook Live. We really appreciate public participation, and I look forward to hearing from some of you on May 6th for public testimony on the budget. Thank you all very much.